Hello, everyone. I hope you're all well. Dave here, back with another video. Today, we are discussing, reviewing, giving impressions, whatever terminology you want to use, on the 2024 Royal Rumble. I watched it last night, as that's when it aired, and I just want to give my thoughts on it. Because it was my first Royal Rumble. I got into wrestling about a year ago, about January of last year. It was before last year's Royal Rumble, but at that point I wasn't watching pay-per-views just because I didn't really, I was just getting into it. So I missed last year's Royal Rumble. So this Royal Rumble was my first, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know what the consensus is about it, but for me, it was really good. I really liked it, and I just want to go into why, talk about each match on the card and just kind of go through that. So anyway, let's see. I guess we'll start with the women's Royal Rumble. It was amazing. I honestly, for me, the women are at this point, I think, better than most of the men in the company. I think their storylines are more interesting. I think their move sets are just flashier and more enjoyable. And just personally for me, hot take, but women are awesome. And I don't know if that's like a crazy thing for me to say, but I love women, and I enjoy watching badass women be badass. And you got to see that in full effect in the women's Royal Rumble. We had so many great people pop up. Naomi started at 2, who hasn't been in the company since 2022, and it was nice that Michael Cole, I think it was, shouted out her TNA title, which unfortunately she just lost to another TNA wrestler who I forget her name. I apologize about that, but you see her, fighting with Bianca Belair right there. But I apologize, I forget her name, but she's actively on TNA, which is pretty great that we've had wrestlers start in WWE and go to other companies and then come back, or start in a different company and come to WWE. Um, we've had that happen before. Obviously, that's nothing new, but to have a wrestler who's currently on an active TNA contract wrestle in a WWE event is actually a really cool big deal. I think it opens it up to more. It just opens it up to more people getting some time to shine, because a lot of these other companies aren't as big as the WWE. So it's nice to shout out not only the wrestlers but these other wrestling organizations. So hopefully they get more fans and more viewership in the future, which I think is very cool. But as for the match itself, a lot of really great surprise entrances. Again, I don't know everybody. I've only been watching for about a year, but I've been interested for a long time, and so I've done my research and I've watched a lot of videos. So I was familiar with a lot of people, but luckily, 2 of my buddies who I was watching with are very big wrestling fans and have been for a while. So whatever I missed, they were able to fill me in on, which was nice. But a lot of wrestlers from different companies, some people that have been kind of MIA for a little bit, and it was just cool. One moment where Kairi Sane went over the top rope, and then caught herself on the side of the ring, like she was Spider-Man or something. That was pretty intense. All the high flying action, the bodies being thrown, it's just cool. It's just it's just really fun. So yeah, I mean, we had all my favorites. I love Kairi Sane, I love Asuka. Becky was there. Becky Lynch is my favorite wrestler, or at least my favorite female wrestler. But the one thing I like about the Royal Rumble is it gives, not I was touching on this briefly with other companies, but it gives people, it gives wrestlers a moment to shine, because usually when somebody comes in, unless it's kind of a comedy act and they get eliminated immediately or whatever, it's they usually give them a good few moves to kind of show their dominance a little bit, before they eventually get thrown out. And for me, still in the grand scheme of things, being relatively new, it gives me an opportunity to be like, oh, who are they? They're pretty cool. They got a cool move set. They got a cool look and a kind of gimmick and persona and whatever. Let me check them out. And knowing the WWE, they don't often actually do things with everybody on the roster, but at least it gives me and other new fans an opportunity to be like, oh, they're kind of cool. Let me see what they're up to. So that's kind of why I like the Royal Rumble in general. But yeah, so let's get back to the actual Women's Royal Rumble. So it was great. Again, it was fantastic. If you haven't watched it, I will be spoiling some stuff, so apologies there. But Bayley did win, which I think a lot of people knew. That was kind of the consensus going into it. Is it was, at least from what I was seeing, it was probably going to be Bayley, and I was very happy to see her win because I think there's a good storyline there. I think, Bayley is someone who I think is better than what she's been given. I mean, she's obviously a heel, and and that's fine. She's got to play the typical heel role, and that kind of defaults to, in the WWE, the typical heel role just kind of defaults to just being, kind of a jackass and being a little annoying. But she's better than like just being that. I think if she's gonna be a heel, that's fine, but put her in the main event picture, which is what they've done here. I think, and a lot of other people think this too, so I'm not just talking out of my ass here, but I think what they're gonna have her do is obviously she won the Royal Rumble. I think she's gonna challenge Io Sky for the belt. I know that's supposed to be her friend and her partner in Damage Control. But I think, with a lot of the turmoil that's going on right now in Damage Control, I think her challenging Io kind of as a, I'm sick of being second fiddle, like I want that belt type deal, could really shake things up and could be like an actual like interesting like competition for the belt. Because as we know, at least lately, a lot of these belt competitions have been pretty boring because we know who's going to win. And we'll get to that later. But for the most part, like that would set up a really interesting what am I trying to say? Oh, there's an ad on this video. That's interesting. So we'll just let that go. And hopefully that's not too distracting at all. But that would be a very interesting storyline, and like that would open up a whole avenue of like, oh, what's gonna happen with Damage Control type deal. Because I do really like Damage Control. I know some people may find them a little overbearing and a little annoying, but I like them. Asuka's one of my favorite wrestlers, like behind Becky. I love Io, I love Kairi Sane, I love Bayley. Like it's a fun. They're a fun group. I used to not really like them too much, but they grew on me, and they're a fun group of little rabble rousers. So I definitely am curious to see what goes on with them in the future. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't remember everybody. This moment with when R-Truth came out during Valhalla's set, I mean, it was hilarious. R-Truth's whole thing now is just kind of being a dummy, which is it's fun. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of fun. I don't know if this means, Judgment Day versus Viking Raiders, potentially. Obviously, I don't think they're going to take that anywhere. I think it was more of just a joke. But it was still good. But anyway, yes, the Women's Royal Rumble was great. It came down to Liv, which it was great to see her back. I know she got injured. Liv Morgan is another one of my favorites. I have so many favorites. Jade Cargill from AEW. I don't know much about AEW, but she's a monster. She's awesome. I really like Jade Cargill now. Even just watching her wrestle a little bit, like she is good at what she does. And she had a little standoff with Bianca Belair for a minute. I think that could potentially be a really good matchup. Like seeing those two go at it would be a really fun match. And honestly, something like that I think has main event potential. Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. I think that would be great. So it came down to them and then Bayley, and obviously Bayley won. But there's a lot of storylines that I think got set up through this Royal Rumble, and a lot that they can do going forward, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, so that was the Women's Royal Rumble. Really good way to start the night. I had a whole group of friends over. We were all hype, and then it immediately got shot down by the Undisputed Title or whatever, the Fatal Four Way, LA Knight, AJ Styles, Randy Orton, and Roman. Again, it goes back to what I said a minute ago. When you know someone's gonna win the belt, like I know storylines are there for a reason, and I know like they're not gonna have Roman drop the belt at the Royal Rumble. If anything, he's gonna drop it at WrestleMania. Um, so I understand like that we all knew Roman was gonna win. We knew that, and that's fine. But it's still boring. Like regardless of if we know that, and I'm at peace with the fact that yeah nobody's gonna beat Roman tonight. It's still boring. Like um the match itself was fine. We got a few good moments, but honestly, I couldn't like tell you a part of it just because it was I didn't really it didn't really stick with me, like I can't really think of a specific part to talk about. Roman, of course, got help from Solo again because that's the only way he wins is by shenanigans. So that was something. What else? The match just kind of ended. My friends and I were talking about something else, and then my one buddy was like, "Oh, by the way, this match just ended," and then we were like, "Oh, Roman won. Okay, yeah, cool. All right, move on." Um, so yeah, that was definitely a bummer and kind of sapped the energy from the room. The next match was a little bit better. Logan Paul and Kevin Owens for the United States belt. Again, I've probably said this before about Logan Paul. I'll say it again. I really, really wish he wasn't such an ass in real life because as a wrestler, he's not half bad. He really isn't. Like, he does play the typical heel of like, oh man, I'm so awesome. This city sucks. Blah 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 blah. Like that's kind of one note. But as an actual athlete in the ring, he's pretty good. Um, so I really wish he was actually a better person in real life. That way I could kind of feel, better. Well, I don't really support him at all, but I could actually like stomach seeing him on screen. Um, uh, but his match with KO was fine. I didn't really watch most of it, honestly, because I was like chatting with people and whatever. Um, but for what it was fine. It kind of ended. I don't know if it was a good ending or a bad ending. I'm still in between on that. But basically, what happened is like Logan was trying to get somebody to give him brass knuckles because he was cheating, as he does, as heels do. But KO took the brass knuckle, like managed to reverse his punch, took the brass knuckles, put him on, and then hit him with it, and then pinned him, or was going to pin him, and then the ref saw it and DQ'd Kevin Owens, which is kind of silly. I mean, it's not silly because he did use the knuckles. I mean, he did take them off of Logan, put them on, and then use them. So that, I mean, you can't do that. But it's just one of those things you got to suspend your disbelief a little bit. It's like, well, why does the ref never see when the bad guys do it, but when the good guy does it, then he's like, oh, you can't do that. Like, it's kind of silly shenanigans, but it is what it is. It's not the end of the world. Sorry, I was getting a drink. It's fine. It is what it is. The match was okay. The match in and of itself was okay. Um, but definitely the two mid card matches. Were not good. In the grand scheme of things, they were just kind of either really boring or just kind of inconsequential. Um, which leads us to the final match of the night, which was the men's Royal Rumble. Uh, and I gotta say that when Jey Uso started, I immediately turned to my buddy and I said, Jimmy's gonna be number two. And I was kind of joking, but I was like, how awesome would that be if I was right? And it turned out I was right. And I felt so smart. Um, which I don't know how I should have felt, because some of you may be like, oh no, duh, Dave, that was obviously going to be, what happened. But again, we don't know that. Um, but I think it was fun seeing them kind of duke it out a little bit. The Bloodline storyline for me is honestly really boring, but I do enjoy Jimmy getting his ass beat a little bit, and I do like Jey Uso now. He's grown on me a lot since going solo. Um, but what else? The men's match was definitely not as good, but it was still really fun. Something my buddy and I, or my buddy had a great idea. I don't know if other people do this, but he said, we're gonna take 30 pieces of paper, and everybody picks two, and those are your two numbers, and then you got to root for those guys. And I had like a bar of like really nice fancy soap, and I was like, oh, whoever wins gets this bar of soap, which was silly, but I lucked out and I got Cody Rhodes. I know it kind of seems a little sketchy seeing as how I was the house, I was hosting. But hand to God, it was all real. I got Cody, and it was, the consensus was him or CM Punk. Um, Punk versus Rollins is a match waiting to happen, and then Cody finishing the story against Roman is a match waiting to happen. And it is happening. I'm happy that Cody won. Him winning back to back is something that only a handful of other wrestlers have done, so that's very cool. And it means, at least I hope it means, the fact that Cody won last night means that Roman Reigns' time is coming to an end. It's got to. At least, right? I hope so, because to have the same main event end in the same way would be really stupid. And maybe I'm naive, and a lot of you other, long-time WWE fans are going to be like, oh, Dave, they've done that before or whatever. But in the grand scheme of things, like that, it's just gotta, like, Cody's gotta be able to finish the story, man. Like, one, so we can stop hearing about it. As much as I love Cody Rhodes, I'm sick of hearing about finishing the story. I just want him to be able to finish it, and then we can move on to different stories. And also, Roman being the same belt holder over and over and over and over again. Like, it's been like 3 years now. Like, it's so boring. And again, I've said this before, like, I've been watching wrestling for a year, and I'm sick of Roman Reigns. So somebody who's been watching it for the whole time he's been the champion, like, literally 3 times as long as me, I can't imagine how they feel. Unless you're a Roman fan, you're probably bored out of your mind. So yeah. But it was overall a good match. There was some fun entrants. Some not as crazy as the women's match. It was all kind of people we either knew or people that weren't really that big of a deal. But we got to see a lot of fun characters, and a lot of my favorites were in there. Of course, Cody was in there. CM Punk obviously is a big deal. I'm trying to remember, like, who else I enjoy that was in there. Again, there's so many people. Off the top of my head, I can't exactly remember. Um, but starting it off with Jimmy and Jay, I think was fun. Pat McAfee being a surprise entrant was fun. It definitely was funny, like him basically trying to go in there and seeing that Omos is in there, who I hate Omos. I hate Omos so much. He's just a big guy. He's terrible in the ring. He's bad on the mic. The only reason that he's there is because he's tall. He's just a big dude, and I hate that so much. But anyway, like Pat McAfee's whole thing of like getting in and then like getting out and then like trying to figure out what he wanted to do and then eventually just like eliminating himself because he was like, no, not we're not doing that. Like that was funny. I definitely think like it was sort of a waste of a spot, just because it was like it was a gimmick and it was a joke. Like at least like R-Truth like kind of being a joke, he was still in it for a little while. But I don't know. It was fine for what it was. But yeah, I mean, again, there was considerably less for me to say specifically about the men's Royal Rumble. It was good. I really enjoyed it, and my friends had a good time, and we all liked watching it. We were all like, "Oh my god, whoa, what?" Like we were all going crazy, when people got eliminated and stuff. Um, but the women's one was way better. The two mid card matches were, like I said, either boring or inconsequential. Um, but overall, again, as much as I had some negative stuff to say, I think the fact that the Royal Rumble is just what it is makes up for it. Like, it's just such a fun, unique take on the traditional wrestling formula. Um, and, it was fun. Being my first time watching it, it was really fun. And I'm excited to see, now what sets up for WrestleMania. The Elimination Chamber next month will be interesting. Um, and I think it's going to be a big WrestleMania. I'm really hoping that there's finally going to be some change involved, especially, I don't want to touch on it too much because it's a whole can of worms. But with Vince and his stuff, he's hopefully going to be like out. Like he was kind of already out. But now I'm hoping that with all that going on, they'll finally kick him like all the way out because he does not deserve to be there in any capacity. Because if even a smidge of the stuff against him is true, which it looks like it might be, then he deserves to be in prison, really. But definitely not anywhere near the WWE. And I'm hoping that anyone that was affected by him, of course, gets the justice that they deserve. Because at the end of the day, that's way more important than the grown men in tights hugging each other. So obviously that's a big deal, and that deserves all the care and attention that it needs. But just from a wrestling fan's perspective, I'm also kind of happy that he's gone because I think that'll lead to a better product because he's so one note and like everything he's done is just not like maybe not everything, but like a lot of stuff that he's done lately is just again almost that's a Vince McMahon product right there. He was handpicked by Vince McMahon just because he's a tall guy. Like that's lame to me. So anyway, I think a big shakeup is coming. I think WrestleMania 40, 40 is a big number. It's I don't know. 40 is a big number. But like my buddy was saying, like every 10 years they kind of do something crazy. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I hope you guys enjoyed this Royal Rumble. I know I did. Feel free to leave comments down below about what you thought of it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.